Podcast. It is the Observations with Big Jim. I'm your host, Big Jim. You can follow me on Twitter at Big Jim Sports. You can follow the show, and please follow the show at Huddle Up Podcast on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube. And actually, if you go to any of our social medias, you can see the link tree, hit that, and get everything you need Huddle Up related or merchandise over at tpublic.com. And follow us, subscribe on all podcast platforms. I want to first apologize. It's been almost 2 months since an observation podcast, and I think the first thing I want to do is I want to address the name of this particular show under the Huddle Up Podcast Incorporated feed. For the first 20 episodes of this, I called it the 5 observations. And I think that's where the big tipping point over the last couple months has been for me is week to week, I haven't necessarily been able to find or isolate 5 observations that I wanted to cover. We come out of the football season. It's the push to the Stanley Cup playoffs. The XFL was there. The NBA was there. Major League Baseball had started. The golf season had begun, but there was nothing that really, there was nothing that really grabbed on to me, and I really started to get out and play golf again because the weather here in Pennsylvania got nice. And the topic of my first observation tonight I'll get to, but the Hershey Bears were on their playoff push. They are now 4 wins away from their 12th Calder Cup championship. But so I think one thing that had hamstrung me, and this is not about making excuses, it's about explanations, is I was struggling to find 5 observations, and I kind of just became lazy. And 1 week became 2 weeks, 2 weeks became 3 weeks, and here we are almost 6 or 7 weeks later between editions of this show. So that I will apologize for. But in terms of the naming of this show, I'm no longer going to call this thing that I do the 5 observations. I'm going to call it Observations of the Big Jim. Because some weeks it might be 5, some weeks it might be 2, some weeks it might be 7. It just depends week to week. And I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to get an episode out every week, but I'm going to do better than once every 7. So thank you for continued support of this show and all the shows on the Huddle Up Podcast Incorporated. I appreciate all your support. But let's dive right in. We are in the end game of the 2022-2023 hockey, winter sports, basketball, hockey, NBA, NHL, but also the American Hockey League. And for those that know me, you know how much the Hershey Bears mean to me and to my family. For those that don't, I've been a Hershey Bears fan for almost 35 years. Yes, if you're counting, that means since I was about 3 years old was when I went to my first Hershey Bears game. My dad and my late uncle have been going to games since the 60s. The Hershey Bears in their 84th season this year. They are in their 24th Calder Cup final. They are looking for Calder Cup win number 12. They haven't had a Calder Cup championship in Hershey since 2010 by the law of averages. Like I said, 11 total in 83 seasons. The team is more than due. Okay. And they had a stretch from 05-06 to 2010 where they won 4 cups in 6 years. So it was quite a run for Hershey then. 3 cups in 5 years. And it was an impressive run, and they haven't won one since then. They got back to the finals in 2016. But this team now just 4 wins away. The Calder Cup finals start on Thursday. The Bears are undefeated on the road this postseason. They have had, I believe, 3 losses at home. I have been in the building for 2 of those, and yes, I do have tickets for a Calder Cup Finals game Game 5, if necessary, but we will see. We will certainly hope I get to watch one more game inside the Giants Center this year. This team is very resilient. They've bounced back from every loss in the postseason and have responded very well. They are and what is wild about this series is they are playing the Coachella Valley Firebirds, who are the AHL affiliate of the Seattle Kraken, who are in their second year. The Firebirds in their first season and have made it all the way to the finals. The Hershey Bears are the eldest franchise at 84 years in the American Hockey League, and going for their 12th. So really, it's old guard versus new blood in the AHL this year. The Bears have never played Coachella Valley, typically due to travel. The teams do not face off. Western Conference, Eastern Conference don't do a lot of battling back and forth. Credit to Jesse Liebman, who I believe works for the Hershey Bears. I want to make sure I get his actual title correctly here. If I can find his account. But the Hershey Bears have not played in California in a number of years, and they are certainly looking to find success there. Yeah, Jesse Liebman is a media specialist and actually works for the Hershey Bears. He pointed out on Twitter today, a little nugget for history buffs. The final series will mark the first time the Bears will have played a game of consequence against a team from California in 55 years. The last time Hershey played a team from California was February 7th, 1968 at San Diego. Hershey had played California-based teams during a 1965-66 and 1967-68 regular seasons as part of an interlocking schedule with the now-defunct Western Hockey League, which included games against the San Francisco Seals, LA Blades, and San Diego Gulls. Like I said, Hershey last played a team from California February 7th, 1968 at San Diego. That Gulls team also featured hockey trailblazer Willie O'Ree. So it has been a long time since the Hershey Bears have played a team from California. They will do so on Thursday in the Coachella Valley. Game 1, Thursday night, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 o'clock Pacific Time. Unlike EJ Christian, and I'm sure he's going to attack me for this one or retort somehow on his podcast, but unlike EJ's Miami Heat, which he refuses to make a prediction on in the NBA Finals, I will make a prediction on my Hershey Bears in the Calder Cup Final. And I will say Bears in 5, because in 2010, when the Bears last won the Cup, it was their first win on home ice, first Calder Cup win on home ice since 1980, so the first time in my lifetime. And it was one of the most memorable sports nights of my life. It was awesome, and I want to relive that energy. So Bears in 5, and hopefully they will bring the Calder Cup back to Central PA for the first time in a long time. Second observation for this episode: the Washington Capitals, who had mutually agreed to part ways with Peter Laviolette, their head coach, have hired former Hershey Bears head coach Spencer Carberry. He spent a few years in Hershey coaching the Bears, including the pandemic seasons, where I think the Bears probably would have won one or two Calder Cups, but no championships in 2020 or 2021. He has spent the last 2 seasons, Carberry has, as an assistant coach with the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, and he comes back to take over a Capitals team that needs a new identity. And really, I think that the Capitals hiring Carberry is a sign of change in this organization. Yes, you still have Oshie, Wilson, Carlson, Backstrom if he returns, and Alexander Ovechkin as the veteran leadership on the Capitals. However, there's a lot of young talent. They're returning from injury: Connor Brown, Dylan Strome, Sonny Milano, Martin Feravari. There's guys in Hershey: Beck Malenstein, Connor McMichael, Alexei Protas, Hunter Shepard, the goaltender. There's a lot of talent in Hershey and in the Capitals prospect pool that it's time. It's time. The Capitals were one of the oldest, if not the oldest, by average age team over the last couple of seasons, each of the last couple seasons, and it's shown. And if you're watching the Stanley Cup Finals, which we'll talk about here in a second, you can see how fast the game is. It's not an old man's game anymore. It's a speed game. It's a hitting game. And while yes, the race for Alex Ovechkin to become the all-time goals leader in the NHL is a very realistic thing, and is something that Carberry and the new coaching staff should absolutely continue to pursue. But it's time. It's time for some of these young players. It's time for a change in mindset, and I really do believe that the hiring of Spencer Carberry is what the Capitals need. A youthful, a different mindset than another NHL head coach retread, and I'm excited. He was very, very good in Hershey. He won a Kelly Cup, which is the ECHL, or the AA affiliate, if you will, thinking of baseball terms, of the Washington Capitals organization. So he knows a lot of these young players. He knows the organization. He knows the culture within the Capitals organization, and I certainly wish him the very best heading towards next season and beyond. A 4-year deal for Carberry. Third observation: Stanley Cup final. The Vegas Golden Knights currently leading the Florida Panthers 2-0. And game 1 was kind of close. Game 2 was an absolute drubbing. First, I want to talk about Adin Hill's save, the save of this playoff, of this season. I haven't seen a save that great since, well, a Washington Capitals goaltender named Braden Holtby did it on the same ice at the same end of the ice in Vegas 5 years ago. Look up Braden Holtby the save on YouTube if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But Adin Hill has been fantastic. The Vegas Golden Knights absolutely look like the team that is destined to raise the cup this year. Florida finally looking like the 8th seed and the lowest points getter of any playoff team in the National Hockey League. Yes, certainly it is not a pretty sight for fans of that team from South Florida. The only other thing I really want to mention about this series, and it's not just this series, it's been this entire postseason. Some of these games have gotten out of control, and if you watch the embarrassment that was Game 2, watching Florida and Vegas, but really Florida turned into an absolute clown show on the ice in terms of cheap shots, dirty hits, stuff after the whistle, and the league they let too much go early, and then they try to put the toothpaste back in the tube, and it just doesn't work. So the embarrassment that some of these games have turned into, the blood's on the NHL's hands, and Commissioner Gary Bettman, the officiating, which has been a joke, they're all to blame. And there's been points in this postseason where, as a hockey fan, I'm embarrassed by the product that is on the ice and what is allowed to go on in some of these games. It's not going to change this year, and I have very little faith that it'll change next year. But I think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to end up winning the Stanley Cup as far as how the rest of this series, Stanley Cup Finals series, will play out. I think it will be Vegas. Florida may get one win as it returns to Sunrise on Thursday for game number 3. But they'll be lucky to get one win, if any. I think Vegas wins this in a sweep or 5 at most. Observation number 4, the Baltimore Orioles. I think have the potential to do something special, my Baltimore Orioles. Currently, as I'm pulling up the standings, currently winning 3-2 in Milwaukee. But in terms of standings, the Orioles are 37-22. They're 5 games out of first in the American League East. They would be at least 4 games up on first place in the Central. They would be just behind the Texas Rangers in the West. They would be in the first in the AL East, the NL East, NL Central, and the National League West. The Orioles, the 3rd best record in Major League Baseball currently. This is only the 2nd time in team history that the Orioles have had 35 wins before June 1st. They are continuing to build on what they did last year. And, this is the very reason when I sat down with the Dollar Dogs and Beer podcast, bing, that I said I thought the Orioles could win 90 games this year. It wasn't a guarantee. I think I predicted 91 or 92. But I said it's possible and it's feasible because this team has a great core. It turns out it will depend how the pitching and bullpen, which have both been fairly strong this year so far. Again, it's June. But there's potential to win 90 games, maybe more. And to do it in that division, again, the best division in baseball, you can try to argue with me all you want, but it ain't gonna work. Is something special. I don't know if this team can win the World Series. I don't. But I think they have as good of a shot as anybody in the American League to at least win the American League and then go from there. Will the moment be too big for them? I don't know. Let's see how the Orioles do in August and September. But if this team can continue to play at this level and they can kind of stare at adversity and stare at big moments and knock them down and be consistent through the crucial months of the year, I have no reason to believe that there isn't a possibility that they do the quote-unquote impossible. Time will tell. Now, all of this said, talking about the lofty moments and how good the Orioles can be, it's June. As I'm recording tonight, is June 6th. Okay? Where teams sit on June 6th can change dramatically. We're not even at the halfway point of the baseball season. Look at where the Phillies were a year ago in July. Okay? And look at where they finished the season. So I'm not sitting here and I'm not putting a deposit down on World Series tickets, okay? That's not what I'm doing. And I'm speaking this not only as an Orioles fan, but as somebody who is to coin a phrase, 1A, 1B, Ernest DJ Christian. But like Phillies are like my de facto National League team. And being this close to Philly and knowing a ton of people who are Phillies fans, and I see a lot of them, some of them, like our very own Matt Muleisen, are very level-headed. But there's others that are selling this team and selling the roster and selling the coaching, asking when is Philly Rob going to get fired? The guy who hasn't even been a manager for this team for a full calendar year yet, they're trying to sell him upstream because the beginning of the season has not been what the Phillies expected coming off a World Series defeat last year. But remember where you were July 1st last year. Remember how quickly a season can change. Okay? And that you don't have to be the number 1 seed in the postseason. Look at the Boston Bruins this year, okay? In the NHL. Look, like there are, and I'm not trying to give a ton of credit to South Florida teams because I don't want E.J. Christian and the other South Florida fans to inflate themselves any more than they already have this springtime. But the Miami Heat and the Florida Panthers are both 8 seeds, and they're in their championship series. So get into the postseason, and then everything's new. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. If you're a team that struggled early, and you get here's a catchphrase for you, hot at the right time, there's a lot of potential there. Because it's hard to be great for 162 or 82 or 70 or what, for a long season. Baseball, basketball, hockey, these are long seasons. It's not the NFL. It's not 18 games, although still hard to do. 72 Patriots are the only team to win it all and never lose a game. It's hard to be great always. So if you're great all through this season, you get to the postseason, you still have to do it again. That's not as easy sometimes as being the team that wasn't great for half the year and is only learning to be great and kind of peaking at the right time. There's another phrase. So stop panicking, Phillies fans or Pirates fans. Well, actually, Pirates fans probably can. But if your roster is good, and you know there's potential there, remember, there's more than half a season to go. My closing 2 observations tonight are surrounding the game of golf. And yes, as I'm recording it here on June 6th, there's one big story, and then there's one that kind of was lost in the weeds a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to start there with Michael Block in the PGA Championship. The PGA Pro from California, who kind of shocked the golf world, ended up finishing, I think, 14th, earned his exemption for the PGA Championship next year. But this amateur player that was going shot for shot, and in some cases better than some of the best golfers in the world, on a weekend where Brooks Koepka from the LIV Golf Tour, more on that later, became the PGA champion. And he was kind of outshined by a guy who probably shouldn't even have made the cut. Maybe he shouldn't even have made the tournament. But the golf world had a great opportunity, and kudos to, I think it was the Heritage Tournament the next week, who gave Michael Block an exemption to play the next week. Block goes out and misses the cut. I think shot a plus 14 over a 2-day period, which, by the way, I would kill to be able to do that. But I saw people, some of the stiffs around the golf world, saying that he was no good for the game, that he was no good for that moment, that Michael Block was, quote, bad for the PGA Tour. And I thought, man, the golf world needs more Michael Blocks. The golf world and the PGA Tour, at least up until about 10 o'clock this morning, needs good stories, because let's be honest, you're never going to get Tiger Woods again, Tiger Mania that you had in the 90s where everybody tuned in to see Tiger. You're never going to get that again, or at least not for a long time, maybe not until Charlie Woods joins the tour. But golf needs these moments, these players, these people who are going to make you tune in, because he's just like us, right? Michael Block was on the Dan Patrick Show 2 days after playing the PGA Championship, when he's on his way to the next tournament, talking about how he hasn't regripped his clubs in 10 years, that he's had the same irons for 12 years, that like people would be like, you'd be shocked to see that there's no grooves hardly on some of his irons because he's worn them down and hasn't replaced them. Unlike PGA Tour players who are getting new equipment monthly, weekly, sometimes daily. I don't know. And Michael Block goes out and finishes 14th on one of the major weekends and will play. And here's the thing. You ask most people at a golf tournament this weekend, who's Michael Block? They probably won't remember. You'll remember again next June when he's in a featured group on day one on ESPN Plus, and they'll talk about this past May when he, when he had his moment in time, his 15 minutes of fame. And then he'll probably fade away, and you'll never hear from Michael Block again, except when they bring highlights up during the PGA Championship. But the PGA Tour needs some good PR. And transitioning to my sixth and final observation of the day, speaking of PR, good or bad, depending how you view it, the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour, along with LIV Golf / the PFI or whatever it's called, the Saudi Arabia group that owns LIV Golf. There's been a merger between the PGA Tour and LIV Golf. If you're not aware of everything around this, basically, the Saudis started a golf league last year, and some of the best players in the world on the PGA Tour sold out, and they sold out for money, and they left for this Saudi Arabia LIV Golf Tour. No cuts, 54 holes, so a 3-day tournament, played in teams, and just for a crap load of money. And there's been a lot of lawsuits, counter lawsuits. There's been a lot of divide in the golf world. And the only time these players have played with each other is at the majors. And LIV Golf players and PGA Tour players have been very unkind to one another in the media. But now they coexist, or they will following the 2023 seasons. It's said to, quote-unquote, unify golf. I don't know what that means, but that's what it's for. Here's the thing. I'm not surprised that it happened. I'm surprised that it happened so quickly. But when you look at it, it's probably both sides did not get the ratings and the attendance that they expected when this split happened. So if you're losing money or potentially losing sponsors or anything like that, guess what? Business is dirty, and follow the money. And that's exactly what the PGA Tour did. To the tune of PGA Tour players found out today on Twitter when the news broke. Players like Rory McIlroy, who sits on the PGA Tour board, who has picked up and carried the PGA Tour on his back throughout this entire saga, as players took less money to stay loyal to the PGA Tour. And now the PGA Tour takes the very money that they told players they shouldn't take. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because this is business. This is what business in the United States and in the world is. You make dirty deals. You tell people not to do something that you will likely end up doing. And that's just how it is. But I feel bad for Rory McIlroy. I feel bad for these guys who stayed loyal. And then had the company they stayed loyal to sell out the same way the Brooks Koepkas and the Phil Mickelsons and the Dustin Johnsons of the world did. And for anybody that is talking about this as if they were some sort of Nostradamus, saying that, so-and-so predicted that this would happen months ago. We could have all predicted this. I don't think there's anybody shocked that the merger happened. The shock is that it happened this quickly. If there's shock at all. But there's no surprise here. In no way, shape, or form am I surprised. This is business in America. This is business in the world. The rich get richer, people get screwed over, and it is what it is. I'll continue to watch golf tournaments next year because, well, apparently now I have no other choice but to watch golf tournaments with this Saudi league. Because the Saudis now own golf. It sucks because I was able to watch the PGA Tour and know that they were better than the crappy, shitty sellouts that Dustin Johnson and Phil Mickelson and Brooks Koepka and those guys were and are. Now I just have to sit back and watch golf and watch and basically give viewership and time to terrible people. But I guess if you do that with anything and you dive down that hole, then the business money is dirty money, no matter how or when it gets sliced. That's going to wrap it up for me with the observations this week. Again, thank you for the support, as always. I certainly do appreciate it. You can follow me at Big Jim Sports. Make sure you are following the show. Please follow the show, share the show at Huddle Up Podcast on all social media platforms. Hit the link tree there. Get our merchandise at TeePublic. Follow us on all podcast platforms. Until next time, and we hope to get some more Huddle Up Podcast off-season episodes recorded. I'll be on vacation for a little over a week, so maybe closer to the end of June, but those shows will be coming as well. So stay tuned to the feed. We hope to get a little bit more active than it's been. We appreciate your support as always. Stay safe, stay smart, and go for the win.